Tonight, Minneapolis is on edge because what people are seeing on their phones, what they are replaying again and again, is not rumor, it's not hearsay, it's video. Video showing federal agents surrounding a man, masked, armed, overwhelming force. And then gunfire. You can hear the shock in the voices of the people recording it. Confusion turns into disbelief. Disbelief turns into horror. People asking out loud what no one ever wants to ask again. Did they just kill him? This is not a distant incident. This happened in Minneapolis, in a major American city, in public view. Witnesses describe more than half a dozen masked federal agents piling onto a man before shots were fired. And within moments, the realization spreads, this man is not getting up. And that's when the anger starts to boil. Because for many people watching this unfold, this isn't an isolated incident. It feels like a pattern. Another moment where force comes first, explanations come later, and accountability feels impossibly far away. Within hours, city leaders were forced to respond. And the tone was not calm, it was furious. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey stepped forward, visibly shaken, and he did not mince words. Mayor Jacob Frey made it clear this was not just about one man. This was about what Minneapolis is being forced to live with. He said he had just watched the video himself, and what he saw, in his words, was federal agents beating and then shooting one of his constituents to death. His question wasn't rhetorical. It was raw. How many more residents have to die? How many more Americans have to be seriously hurt before this operation ends? He said this isn't about politics. It's not about party loyalty or campaign narratives. It's about American values. And he directly addressed President Trump, asking how many times local leaders have to plead for this to stop before someone listens. Frey said Minneapolis is being treated like a testing ground. He compared what's happening to tactics used in other countries, not here, not in the United States, not in a city like Minneapolis. He rejected the idea that the anger in the streets is the community's fault. He rejected the idea that local leaders alone are responsible for lowering the temperature. Just one day earlier, he said, 15,000 people marched peacefully. No broken windows, no injuries, no chaos. That, Frey said, is what America looks like. What weakens the country, he argued, is unidentified, heavily armed federal agents roaming city streets with no transparency and no accountability. He warned that this kind of militarized presence erodes trust, not just in law enforcement, but in democracy itself. And then his message turned personal. He told people listening that their children will ask what side they were on. Their grandchildren will ask what they did when this was happening. Did you stand up? Did you speak out? Did you protect your city and your country? Frey said this is not who America is, and if the goal of this operation was peace, it has failed. If the goal was safety, it has done the opposite. He called on the president to act like a leader, to put Minneapolis first, to put America first, and to remove these federal agents immediately. As the mayor finished speaking, attention shifted to law enforcement and to what information, if any, was actually being shared. Next, the focus turned to the Minneapolis Police Department and to how little information they themselves said they had. Police Chief Brian O'Hara stepped forward, and his message was striking for what it didn't include. He said the victim was a 37-year-old white male, a Minneapolis resident, and believed to be an American citizen. Beyond that, he admitted there were no official reports explaining what led up to the shooting. Let that sink in. A man is dead. Federal agents fired the shots, and the city's own police chief says he hasn't been told what actually happened. O'Hara confirmed what everyone already knew, that the department had seen the same video circulating on social media as the public. The same shocking footage that set off anger across the city. The same footage raising more questions than answers. He said his department's demand was simple, that federal agencies operating in Minneapolis follow the same standards expected of law enforcement everywhere in this country. Discipline, humanity, integrity, those were his words. But even as he spoke, the tension on the ground was escalating. O'Hara acknowledged the anger. He acknowledged the outrage, but he urged people to remain peaceful, warning that the situation had been declared an unlawful assembly. Police issued repeated orders for crowds to disperse. Mutual aid was requested from the Minnesota State Patrol and surrounding agencies. And the message to residents was clear. Avoid the area, go home. Don't let this city tear itself apart. Still, the underlying frustration was impossible to ignore, because the question hanging in the air was simple. If local police don't know what federal agents are doing in their own city, then who is actually in control? And as that question lingered, the response from the state's highest office came next, and it was anything but restrained. Then came the reaction from the governor's office, and the anger moved from the city level to the state level. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said he had spoken directly with the White House after what he described as another horrific shooting by federal agents. His words were blunt. He called the incident sickening. He said Minnesota has had enough. Walz didn't hedge. He didn't soften the language. He said the president must end this operation now. He demanded that thousands of heavily armed, untrained federal officers be pulled out of Minnesota immediately. This wasn't political theater. This was a governor saying the federal government has crossed a line inside his state. Walz made it clear that this wasn't just about one incident. This was about escalation, about a pattern of aggressive enforcement that, instead of calming tensions, is inflaming them. Instead of restoring order, it's pushing communities closer to the edge. And then the focus shifted again, this time to Washington. CNN's White House reporter stepped in to explain what the federal government was saying, and just as importantly, what it wasn't saying. She confirmed what local officials had already hinted at. Federal authorities were not sharing information with Minneapolis police leadership. Not details, not context, not a timeline. The situation, she said, was fluid and volatile. The president had been briefed. The administration was watching closely. But clarity? Accountability? Those were still missing. The reporter pointed out something else, a shift in tone from the Trump administration in recent weeks, an acknowledgement, finally, that federal agents and ICE officers can make mistakes. But acknowledgement doesn't undo a death. And then came the official statement from the Department of Homeland Security. According to DHS, at 9:05 a.m. Central Time, federal officers were conducting what they described as a targeted operation against an individual wanted for violent assault. DHS claimed the man approached Border Patrol officers with a 9mm handgun. They said he resisted. They said officers feared for their lives. They said defensive shots were fired. Medics were called. Aid was given. But the man was pronounced dead at the scene. DHS went further, claiming the suspect had additional magazines, no identification, and posed a threat of mass violence. The language was clear. This was not de-escalation. This was justification. And the administration showed no sign of backing down. This marked the third shooting involving federal officers this month. One deadly, one non-fatal. And now this. While officials on the ground were begging for calm, Washington was preparing for confrontation. And that leaves Minneapolis and the country with a question that hasn't been answered yet. Who is this operation really protecting? And at what cost? And this is where everything comes to a head. 3 shootings in 1 month involving federal authorities. 2 of them deadly. Local leaders demanding answers. State officials calling it sickening. And a federal government standing firm, offering statements instead of transparency. Minneapolis police say they weren't informed. The mayor says the operation must end. The governor says Minnesota has had enough. And yet, the agents remain.
What makes this moment so explosive isn't just what happened on the street. It's what happens after. The silence between statements. The gaps in information. The growing sense that decisions are being made far away from the people who have to live with the consequences. Because if federal agents can operate in a city without coordinating with local law enforcement, if a governor can demand withdrawal and be ignored, if a mayor can watch a man die on video and still be told this is about safety, then what exactly is the chain of command? And more importantly, who is accountable when it breaks? Tonight, Minneapolis is being told to stay calm, to trust the process, to wait for more details. But calm doesn't come from unanswered questions, and trust doesn't survive in the dark. This isn't just about one shooting. It's about how power is used. It's about who gets protected and who gets explained away. Because once heavily AR-med
federal operations become normal, once deaths are justified before investigations are complete, once transparency becomes optional, there's no clear line anymore, and the question now isn't just what happened this morning. The question is what happens next, and how many more times the public is expected to look away. We're watching this closely, and so should you, because when accountability disappears, history has a way of repeating itself.